These Mexico City socialites may lead opulent lives, but a peek behind the curtain reveals a tangled web of intrigue, envy, and personal struggles. No, geez, here we go. So basically, this show is a combination of Gossip Girl and Real Housewives. If that sounds confusing, it's because it is. And honestly, comparing it to those shows is a huge compliment. Made in Mexico, or Hecho en Mexico, was released on Netflix on September 28, 2018. The show was created by Love Productions USA. You may be familiar with another one of their shows, The Great British Bake Off. Made in Mexico set out to be a show that shattered the stereotypes of Mexicans, and the show was very clearly tailored to an American audience, or at least a Western one, since the cast members frequently use English in situations where native speakers wouldn't. Don't get me wrong, code switching is definitely a thing for bilingual speakers, but I feel like this cast pushed their ability to speak English way too much. Like, say you finally get the chance to make or break your singing career that has supposedly been your dream your whole life, and despite having all the resources and connections to make it a reality, you wait until you're 30 years old and a TV show is being created about you to actually pursue it. And when you finally get the opportunity, you sing a song outside your native tongue where you yourself admit you can't remember the words, and even all your friends admit that it wasn't the best decision. Made in Mexico follows the lives of not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven, not eight, but 9 cast members. Each one has a different story arc, and naturally there is some overlap. What they all share in common is their wealth and their status, with many having parents that are largely involved in Mexico's politics and economy, and some having legacies whose names carry a lot of weight with them. But before we delve into each of these characters, I would like to preface this video by saying these are critiques on the personalities they portrayed in the show, and are not reflections on who they are as people. Think of them as characters, not as their true, authentic selves. Gitzia is one of those characters that is portrayed as a protagonist, but honestly, she contributes a lot to the drama in the show. She frequently announces that she's a very direct person, and this comes across as rude during some of the scenes, such as her telling Hannah her designs aren't good, and then dumps water all over them. She's one of Robbie's best friends, and she is an emotional support for him throughout the show. Her story arc is relatively slow until the end of the show when we learn about how she feels unappreciated from her mother-in-law. Chantal is a self-proclaimed ego blogger, and I don't know much about the blogging world, but is that a thing? I googled it, and the only results I was finding about ego blogging was centered around making sure your blog isn't being consumed by, well, you. She's more of an influencer than anything else. Her story arc is that she's a Mexican, Spanish, American living in Mexico City. Quite honestly, she doesn't have a huge impact on the show and serves as a bridge between the US and Mexico. Carlos was quite honestly my favorite character from the entire show. He was lovable, fun, well-connected, and highlighted a very huge problem in Mexico: kidnappings. We get a heart-wrenching backstory about how his father didn't want anything to do with him after he was released, or maybe rescued. The show doesn't really give a lot of background other than him being freed. He may be one of the best characters from the show because his story comes full circle and he's so vulnerable throughout every moment. Liz is engaged to a Mexican and now lives in Mexico City. Colu is the Mexican feminist we live for. Pepe is a 36-year-old entrepreneur who created a name for himself in Mexico's nightlife. Robbie is the man who drinks a lot. No, just kidding. There's a lot we can say about Robbie. He's portrayed as the nice guy trying to fix his life, but more on him later. Hannah is the daughter of a Kurdish Muslim and a Mexican Catholic. She's the hybrid of diversity that Mexico is filled with. She's also a Harvard graduate, activist, politician, philanthropist, author, businesswoman, and somehow still gets the reality TV villain edit. With a lot of personalities in one show, it would be difficult for an editor to capture everyone's storyline, so here's a brief rundown of the show as a whole. Gitzia and Robbie are best friends and in-laws. Carlos and Shanique are friends and know each other through the media social scene. Shanique and Pepe have known each other since they were 12. Pepe and Carlos have known each other since childhood. Carlos and Liz know each other from before filming, but it's not really specified how. Golu and the aforementioned group meet up at a ranch for a baptism for Robbie's nephew, where Robbie gets drunk and makes snide comments at Golu, which he later apologizes for, but Golu loses interest in him throughout the show. Hana is then introduced, and we learn how her and Chantal have known each other since high school. We then get the plot developing of how Hana is obsessed with her image, which, I mean, if you're gonna do worldwide activism, you kinda should be. Hana asks Gizia for advice on designs for her clothing line. Gizia and Golu raise good points about how the fashion line might offend different religions, which is later justified when Hana meets with different group leaders and they express the same sentiment, and then Gizia spills water all over Hana's drawings. Okay, sorry, I don't know why, but this is the funniest thing that's happened in the whole show. Robbie accuses Hana of trying to create a fake relationship off-screen. He calls her out on it on her birthday, and the issue is brought up again during a Thanksgiving dinner. Prior to said dinner, Liz and her fiancé Carlos are invited to Hana's apartment, where Hana is clearly trying to get Liz to take her side. There's some side plots of Pepe recruiting Julio Cesar Chavez, a well-known boxer in Mexico, to work at a gym he's building. Chantal says she's fine with being engaged until she's not. Liz's fiancé almost decides not to marry her and then gaslights her when she tries to ask why he's acting the way that he is. Carlos eventually reunites with his father. Robbie contemplates actually being a dad to his child. Golu and Pepe fall for each other, and Robbie is clearly upset. And if you are confused by any of that, don't worry. You are not alone. It's a lot. A lot happens in this first season. What the show does well is that it shows off a different view of Mexico that isn't shown on mainstream media a lot today. In shows like Narcos Mexico and Ozark, where Mexico is shown, it's shown as the distributor for drugs and, of course, the cartels. But Mexico's so much more than that. It's a beautiful country with luxury sites, expensive restaurants, beautiful landmarks, rich history, and amazing food. Yeah, it has its problems, but what country doesn't? In most of Western media, Mexico is shown as a third world country riddled with crime. This show attempts to challenge that. One of the main reasons I really started disliking the show was Robbie's story arc. The show paints Robbie as a sweet guy who's made a couple of mistakes and wants to turn his life around, but some of the issues I have with this are when he confronts Hana, he claims he's doing it because he's a new person, but wouldn't a new person or someone who's trying to change toxic habits have taken a different approach and say, I don't know, not called someone a liar at their birthday party in front of all of her family and friends? Also, in the show it's revealed that Robbie has a son he hasn't seen for over a year, and various cast members try to get him to reach out and applaud him for doing so. And maybe these are my own personal daddy issues talking, but why exactly is this being celebrated? Don't get me wrong, Robbie trying to be in his son's life is obviously a good thing. My issue with it is, why now? Why now when a TV show is being created? My personal thought is that had the show never been produced, Robbie likely would have never reached out to his baby mama to see his kid. So when Gizia gets upset and cancels Hana for using the show for her foundation and potential political career, it just feels hypocritical because she isn't using that same energy towards Robbie using the show as his reason to connect with his son, or towards Chantal using it to clearly build her audience, or towards Shanique deciding to pursue a singing career. And I get that this is reality TV and that people have to have story arcs, but they're just so painfully obvious that even throughout the entire season, the cast members become aware of themselves on TV and showing their true selves. Take Shanique, for example, a TV host and local celebrity in BF who waited until the show was created to pursue her singing career, which, by the way, I don't think ever really took off. She had the connections the entire time to make that dream a reality, but waited until the show to try it. What I like about Carlos's, Golu's, and Pepe's story arcs were how natural they felt. Carlos was so vulnerable the whole time that, I'll admit, I had tears in my eyes when him and his dad finally reunited. Pepe's gym construction didn't even feel forced because it felt like it was happening before the show had started filming, since he was already an established businessman in Mexico. Ironically, the best parts about the show were the ones we got to see the least of, like Golu's and Pepe's showmance, Carlos finding the strength to reunite with his father, Liz's emotional journey of moving to Mexico and almost having her wedding cancelled, Chantal wanting to become engaged, and Gizia's unsteady relationship with her mother-in-law. Some of the most heart-jerky moments in this show were shown to us the least to give us a relevant drama with Robbie and Hana on her phone. or having Kitsia throw water all over her designs. Where this show really falls short is that it didn't meet my expectations of what it was going to be. I expected a show with a diverse cast, and quite frankly, this cast is all white, at least in terms of Mexico. So, what a lot of people don't realize about white privilege is that it exists in so many countries outside of the US. And this show is a prime example of how colorism is pervasive in Mexico. In fact, during the show, the only times we see brown people is when they're working in service industry jobs such as food workers and maids. We also conveniently don't see the real parts of Mexico City, like street food culture, las colonias, and vendors in the street. In fact, in an interview with Pepe, he himself spoke about how colorism is an issue in Mexico, but he failed to acknowledge his privilege on how colorism really impacts his country. This issue is also the one that the show has been critiqued on the most, some even making jokes about how the whole cast is from Jalisco, Mexico's whitest state. And the only character who may have been aware of this was Hannah, the show's villain. During her photo shoot, we see that she not only has models of different sizes, but of different races, colors, and accessibilities. And this may be why I was low-key a Hannah stan during the show, and why I'm trying so hard to defend her, but it was nice to see someone using the platform given to them for a good cause. Overall, this was kind of a frustrating show to watch, and when I was writing the script for this video, I expected to tear it to shreds. But the show itself starts conversations, and even through my frustrations, it made me feel something. I can't say it was terrible, but I also don't think I'll ever watch it again. It didn't change the way the world sees Mexicans, but it launched discourse on colorism and privilege in countries outside the US, something that's never really hit mainstream media, and quite honestly, still really hasn't. And Made in Mexico isn't the only show to use white cast members when representing Latin American countries, but it was one of the few with a large enough platform, aka Netflix, that it could be critiqued on these topics. We will likely never see a season 2, but the cast members are alive and well, many still living their lives in Mexico City. I would love to see a show with a similar concept in the future, but if it's ever done again, I hope it's done better and with more awareness of itself so the show can see the true reality of Mexico. And please, for the love of God, let the next show off the street food culture. The world needs to see how wonderful Mexico's food is. Hey there, if you're listening to this, it means you made it to the end of my video. I want to take a moment to thank you for sticking around until the end. I'm a new YouTuber and I'm trying to grow my channel, so please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video so you can see more of my analysis videos in the future. Also, be sure to follow me on social media for updates. Gracias por hablar conmigo hoy. Ciao!